Hey everybody, it's Aaron from Got a Minute. Before I get started, I just wanted to thank you for your emotional support, your financial support, and your prayers. It ain't easy doing what I'm doing here, but it's all for God's glory, and I appreciate everything. Go Jesus Go, we're waiting for that great day. Until that day, we get to study and learn more about His promises and His timing and His events, and it just does not end. It does not end. I was sitting there studying all day today, and I was going to make a very analytical video, but I thought I would just come out and just talk about essentially what I read and just sum it up and just talk to you as if you're on the porch with me, in very easy to understand, and you can dig deeper into some of these studies. I am going to link one article that I read that helped me out a bit. I was reading both Amplified and New King James versions and bounced around the different translations. I was reviewing the first book of Maccabees as well, because that's got more information on the story of Antiochus Epiphanes the fourth. So, pretty complicated things here. So again, I'm going to try and keep it simple. In order for us to understand Daniel 9:27, we need to look at chapters before and after it. Daniel is an extremely prophetic book. In fact, Daniel's prophecy was so accurate with the time of Antiochus Epiphanes IV that some people questioned if it was even written before it happened, because it was so accurate. So Daniel 9:27 is sandwiched between Daniel 8 and Daniel 11, which both chapters have a strong theme of Antiochus Epiphanes IV. And why do we care about Antiochus Epiphanes IV? Because right around 165 BC, in that time frame, I can't remember the year. Again, I'm not being too analytical here, but in around that time frame, what happened was he showed up. He was king, and he started to change the laws and the tradition of the Jewish people, basically, and he took over Egypt in such and such a year. And it says in the 145th year of that particular time frame, he essentially set up the abomination of desolation in the temple. Well, first he said he was God, and then 10 days later he sacrificed a pig on the altar. And then, but before that happened, he was making covenants with the Jewish nation. He was changing everything. He was changing their culture. And the lukewarm Jewish people essentially were like, yeah, let's just who cares about our Jewish customs and our beliefs and our feasts and our Sabbaths? We don't care. We'll adopt whatever you want. We want to just... So that a lot of them adopted the Greek culture that he was trying to bring in. He was trying to bring in a Greek culture, and he did that for many years. So he was for some of them it was fine, and he was making deals, basically. He was a deal maker. And then approximately 2 years, give or take, after that time, when he kind of was breaking the tradition, that's when he set up that abomination of desolation. But there was a chosen group of the Jewish people, led by Judas Maccabees, who said, you know what, we're not doing this. We're going to keep the rules. We're going to keep the commandments of God. We're going to keep the Sabbaths. We're going to keep our feast days. We're not doing this. And one of the Jewish guys was going to go sacrifice to the idols, and Judas Maccabees was filled with righteous anger, according to First Maccabees. He went and killed the Jewish guy, and he killed one of the, I believe it was the priest, who was forcing them to sacrifice idols to these fake gods, the god of Zeus or whatever it was. But the point is, Judas Maccabees led a revolt, and he said, you know what, whoever is against all this, come with me. We're going to the mountains. And they went to the mountains for 3 years. They came back after 3 years, and they took the temple back. And then on the 25th day of the 9th month, that same day, they restored the whole thing, and it went back to God. They restored worship back to the true God. And so when you read Daniel 9:27, and also Daniel 8, let's stay there for a second. Daniel 8, I think it's Daniel 8:14, is talking about 2,300 daily sacrifices. Long and story short, it looks like it means 1,150 days. This is where I might lose you, so just stay with me for 1 minute here. This is the most complicated part of it. because you would make the rule is you do sacrifices in the morning and at evening. So 2,300 actually means 1,150. Okay, here's the confusing part. Again, back then, when we're in the book of Daniel, there's 360-day years. So, but then they also compensated for the once in a 19-year cycle, 7 years out of the 19-year cycle, you would add an extra month to compensate for the missed days. So what I'm saying is, long story short, in simplicity, Daniel 8:14, when it's talking about 2,300 days, it's actually 1,150 days from the time that Antiochus was doing what he was doing with the abomination and when they restored the temple when they came back, okay? Hope that makes sense. So again, Daniel 8 is talking about Antiochus and the time that it took Antiochus to, desecrate the temple and for the temple to be restored again in its proper form. So Daniel 8 is talking about Antiochus Epiphanes, which is a blueprint for the Antichrist that is to come. Essentially, Antiochus shows up for a few years and was making deals and changing laws and changing things on the Jewish people. And then it was a few years later he did the abomination of desolation, which was around 3 years, give or take, okay? So it's a perfect blueprint of what is to come. So not only is Antiochus Epiphanes in Daniel 8, but it's also in Daniel 11. More detail there. And if you don't know, if you want more detail than Daniel 8 and Daniel 11, you go to the book of Maccabees. You'll find most of the detail in 1 Maccabees chapter 1 and also Maccabees chapter 4. 1 Maccabees chapter 4 with all these date and year counts. And so now we're in Daniel 9:27. And so some people want to say, that's Jesus. People want to say Jesus is going to make a covenant for 7 years with many. And they want to just pull apart one little grammar word and try and say that it was Jesus that did the first 3.5 years of Jacob's trouble, and therefore, they get this theory that it's Jesus breaking this covenant. They say, it was Jesus on the cross, but it's not true. Daniel 8 and Daniel 11 are sandwiching Daniel 9:27. So somebody like Antiochus Epiphanes is going to do exactly what Antiochus Epiphanes did. He's going to come, he's going to make a covenant with the Jewish people, and in the midst of this time that he's there, just like Antiochus did, he is going to break a covenant with many, exactly what Antiochus did. And so, in order to understand Daniel 9:27, you really have to understand what was going on in history. So do a really good history lesson with Daniel 8 and Daniel 11 and understand how all the rulers and Alexander the Great and all that, and how all the empires changed. And there's a lot of clarification in Daniel 8 and 11, but you might have to do some digging to understand the history a bit more, because there's a lot of detail in Daniel 8 and Daniel 11. So Daniel 9:27 is essentially what it is. It's 1 week. It's seven years. We're not in it. We're not in this 7-year covenant yet. And if a rapture date passes, it passes, and we still need this 7-year window to deal with. The two witnesses are not here yet. It says that, and that's going to be one indicator. You'll know if you're in tribulation if you see guys stopping rain and blowing fire out of their mouth and turning water into blood and all this kind of craziness. You'll know if you see those two guys. And so we're not there. That's one clear indicator. Some people are like, we're in tribulation. We just simply can't be. And so, because they're going to be spreading the gospel. But let's get back to Daniel 9:27. That is a 7-year covenant following the exact blueprint of Antiochus Epiphanes. The day counts and the year counts might be slightly off because back then that calendar was a little different than our calendar. But nonetheless, he was a perfect blueprint of the Antichrist. So again, we have Antiochus Epiphanes in Daniel 8. We got Daniel 9:27 talking about 1 week covenant, which is exactly what Antiochus Epiphanes did. Then we got Daniel 11 talking about Antiochus Epiphanes the fourth once again. Antiochus Epiphanes the fourth, the type of the Antichrist. We have a literal prophecy about the Antichrist in Daniel 9:27. And then if you were second guessing it, It says it again in Daniel 11. Daniel is a prophetic book in its entirety. So that's that. Hope that makes sense. Again, if you want to read some articles, I'll link the article. Read First Book of Maccabees 1 through 4. I'd say you get most of the detail in there. Read Daniel 8. Read Daniel 11, and then you'll understand Daniel 9:27 way more. But if you're just trying to take one little word out of Daniel 9:27, you're not going to get it. You got to understand the whole story. And we got to go from Genesis to Revelation to understand a lot of things. Sometimes it's not in one verse or one word. You got to go all over the place and see the blueprint everywhere. See the types and shadows everywhere. Hopefully that helps. Go, Jesus, go. See you in the clouds one day closer. Adios. Areco's getting a little antsy. Oi.
Hallelujah, hallelujah.